Hello. I wanted to make this quick video, and I hope it's quick, but I have a tendency to ramble on. You can always just look at the bottom and see, how long the video actually is when I'm done. But I wanted to start talking about how to get the most out of AI copywriting software. You actually want to have good copywriting skills because there are certain things you cannot trust AI to do. And there are other things that you can trust AI to do, but you will get much better results out of AI if you actually know direct response and copywriting principles, which is what I'm going to hopefully prove to you now. This is completely unscripted. I do have one example for part of the process here to show you because I did it yesterday. But the beginning here, I'm not going to. So AI, or large language model software, basically predicts what's the best set of words or sentences to use next. And I know that there's a lot of people who put so much stock into this, into AI, that they think that they can just get rid of all the copywriters and their staff. And almost invariably, they always come back to maybe they've fired three, but they bring back one who knows how to operate AI. And I'm going to show you why they want copywriters to operate AI. Okay, so large language models are really good for taking ideas and getting down that first draft. They are fantastic at it. You can go ahead and instantly get 10 different versions of a first draft done. But what the AI can't do is it doesn't have any emotions. So there's two parts of the process in copywriting that it really can't mimic that well. The first is unique ideas. It cannot come up with unique ideas. It is all based on something that's been written before. So even when you have top copywriting experts and gurus creating their own software and programming it with their frameworks and their formulas and stuff like that, it's still not coming up with anything new. It's coming up with something that's based off of what they've written before. And I'm not saying that that is not good to use if you don't have in your budget to actually hire a copywriter with any kind of experience, but you can do a lot better if you start to learn that. And then so coming up with the ideas of prompting the software to tell the software what it is, the points that you want it to make in your advertising or sales message, is a lot better if you're coming up with unique concepts. So unique offers, unique positioning, unique sales arguments, and so forth. The other part it's not really great at, which I'm going to definitely prove to you today, because I've already did this yesterday, is it's not really great at the editing process. Because when you're editing, what you're doing is you're removing out anything that's not exciting. And you are also, shortening the copywriting. And I have a book on editing copy, which you definitely want to grab a hold of and read. It'll help make everything you do in copywriting better. And there are certain steps in copywriting AI can do, for sure. You can say, hey, change this all to fourth grade level language. You can say shorten the paragraphs, make sure that there's no paragraph with more than 3 sentences. And I know everybody wants to shoot down and make every sentence, every paragraph a one sentence paragraph. That throws off rhythm. That's not a really great thing to do. But anyway, there's those little things it can do. What it can't do is split up a sentence and leave it on a kind of a cliffhanger or an incomplete thought that makes the reader feel incomplete unless they continue reading, because the goal is to make people feel like they can't stop reading, or else they're going to miss something that's important in their life. Excuse me if you hear my dog rattling around here, Lilo, but I don't, I'm not going to kick her out of my office. Even, by the way, this is not my office. It's a virtual background. It's the one that I love the most that comes with Zoom. Any case, so what happens with editing is you can't tell it, this is the exciting part. This is what will make me want to read more. It does not know that. Okay, so you could program it to say, and put a whole bunch of times say, but wait, there's more, or something like that. But humans are that's going to cause a lot of problems. So let's talk real quickly about the big problems that you need to have with AI. One is it says things that are factually inaccurate. And the reason I know this is I've asked AI about myself. So there's absolutely, and sure, some people will kid themselves and stuff like that, but it was saying some stuff that was better than is actually true in reality. But I can tell you that it is inaccurate. I have asked it questions about situations and people that I am very familiar with, and it has come up with very inaccurate information. So that's one problem that you have with it. And that can also lead to legal problems. Recently, there was an issue between two very well-known marketers. And without getting into the details or the nuts and bolts or any of that drama that came about, is this. what happens is if your software is turning around and you're telling it to come up with a person or a human being, and and it turns around and starts looking to mimic the types of human beings that are influencers in your market, you can run up into some serious legal trouble, because that could end up being trademark infringement if they've trademarked their name and their likeness. And a lot of top marketers do that. And you can't be, even if you turned around and said, hey, I'm going to have a human being look at this in the end to make sure that everything is accurate and that I'm not mimicking somebody who's famous. You can't be sure of that, because surprisingly, I was talking, it was somebody was saying that they didn't know who one of these marketers were. And I was like, how would you not know who that person was? They're definitely famous. But there doesn't mean the people on your team. So you can never trust AI to just write ads, put them out there, and test it and see what works. You're endangering yourself legally as well. So that's another problem that you have with it. So, but I'd say the really biggest problem is still not being unique and not standing out in a crowd. So I don't care if you are hacking or you are creating you're telling it to do these things that everybody else seems to be working and seems to be doing, because it's always the first person to do something that really gets the traction for it. So the first pizza joint to turn around and say, we'll deliver it in 30 minutes or it's free, got a lot of traction. By the time it was the fifth or sixth pizza place making that same promise, they just lost, they didn't have all the cachet. You're like, yeah, that's a copycat. Okay, so that's the way it works. So let's get into this and let me show you some examples. Now, this is completely unscripted. I do have an idea of what I'm going to tell. I'm going to use ChatGPT, and I know, you don't use ChatGPT. What you're using is Claude. It's so much better. Or, you're using Manus for research or whatever it is. It doesn't make a difference for the point that I am trying to make. So let's go to ChatGPT real quick. Okay, and so I'm going to tell this thing to write me an ad for a watch. Hopefully it's going to figure out that I want to talk about a wristwatch. Okay, so here we go. Timeless style, precision you can feel. Meet the watch that does more than the time, it defines it and stuff like that. So this sounds like a generic ad, and it's not necessarily bad. By the way, AI is great for coming up with concepts and ideas that you hadn't thought of. So, I wouldn't say that if you say, write me another, that there's nothing in here that I might go, hey, I want to borrow that and use it for my ad. But let me give you what I think would be a better prompt just for the concept. Now, obviously, you have different patterns for ways of working with AI. You can actually say, write me 10 headlines, choose a headline. You can say, write me 10 pieces of body copy, give me 5 closing arguments and so forth, and then choose the best and cobble them together to make one ad. So I'm not pretending that what I'm doing is doing all that AI can do right here. Okay, so write me an ad for, sorry, I'm not a great typist, for a watch based on a few great reasons that reminding you that your time is valuable pays off. Okay, so that's a concept. Oh, I don't know. I'll say stay logged out. I didn't know that I wasn't logged in. I do have an account. Okay, your time is valuable. Wear something that reminds you. Every second you spend is an investment. So why not keep the truth right on your wrist? This is just a watch. This isn't just a watch. It's a daily reminder that your time matters, that your goals matter, that you matter. When you glance down, you don't just see the hour. You remember to focus on what truly counts. Say no to what wastes your energy. Show up with intention every single day. That, in my opinion, is a better ad. Now, I can make this even better and say, give me 3 to 5 very short stories, no longer than a couple paragraphs, that talk about, ways that, to put this concept into better use, and say that, where it's reminded me that my time is valuable. And so that was worth every bit of the watch. But I think this just alone proves it. And by the way, I've never typed this prompt into AI ever before. This is the very first time that I've ever done it. And I think it proves the point. So prompting is better done with a good marketer, somebody who actually can come up with a concept that's different from what everybody else is doing. Now, I did come up with this concept when talking about watches a long time ago. In fact, I was with John Carlton, and he looked at me because I had a Rolex watch on, and he said, well, why would you spend so much money on a watch when you know that like $20, $40 Casio keeps better time. And I said, because it reminds me that my time is valuable. And he went, okay, that's a good excuse. So there may be somebody who's already borrowed that from me, or you may have heard that before. But when I did that, that was 20 years ago. So in any case, but you see how that kind of a new concept, being put out there can lead to better results. So that's why another reason that you want a good marketer who thinks the way that a copywriter does. Okay, so let's talk now about editing. So this is actually true. Recently, a top marketing expert told me many of his clients love using my tactics for writing headlines. So one of the concepts that you want to do in editing is make things brief. Okay. And you don't want to go overboard with this, but it's to shorten headlines. So my dad gave my editing book contains a whole bunch of tips for making people feel incomplete unless they keep reading. It has ways to inject hidden psychology. It does a whole bunch of other things. But my dad gave, and he's the only one I know of in history to give 5 editing techniques. So what a lot of copywriters, including the world famous, legendary David Ogilvy said, I'm not a great copywriter, I'm paraphrasing, but I'm a fantastic researcher and a good editor. Okay. And that's true. All your copy power comes from your research, and the professionalism comes in your editing. And ChatGPT, Claude, proprietary software by other copywriting gurus and everything, they're great at writing first drafts. Okay. But they still need to be cleaned up. And so this is where I'm going to show you how it didn't clean up. So what I did was, so my dad's 5, I'm going to give you his 5 concepts. Okay. And I'm only going to touch on one of them right here. And so one of them is to use break up paragraphs and break up sentences, make them short. So there's 2. And the reason that you're doing that is to make sure when people look at the copy, they don't think, oh, I don't have time to read this, because as soon as it's going to take me 10 minutes just to get past that first paragraph that's like a page long. If you want to see an example of the exact opposite, what to do with your editing, look at the book 2 Years Before the Mass by William Henry Dana. That Dana Point is named after. And that book was a regular sized book, but I wanted to rename it 2 years of reading this book. It was painstaking to read. It's the exact opposite of what you want to do as a copywriter, which is you want people to look at it and go, I could dive in there real quick and just kind of see what this is about. So that's why you break up the paragraphs and you break up the sentences. It's to make it short, make it look like it's something I can just check out real quick and see if this is something, again, this is a concept I push over again, see if there's something in here that would benefit my life. I want to make sure that I'm not missing something that I could use that would benefit my life. Okay, so that was the first 2. He also said to read your copy out loud. Most copywriters do not do this and they get lazy, but it really helps to find out where things don't flow. So, and AI can't do that, right? AI can't read the copy out loud. So it'll be grammatically correct. It doesn't mean that it flows well. And you want to, anytime you stumble for a second, you want to fix that no matter what. Okay, so there's the 3 things. And so another one that he did was to remove the VATs. He called it the superfluous VAT hunt. So many times we use the word that in cases where we don't need to. In fact, this sentence comes from a lesson I was giving on that. So it was recently a top marketing expert told me that many of his clients love using my tactics for writing headlines. And my dad training me would have said, get rid of that because you don't need it because it reads perfectly well without it. Recently, a top marketing expert told me many of his clients love using my tactics for writing headlines. So you do not want to get rid of all the instances where you've used the word that. Sometimes it is necessary. But that's the level of detail that copywriters go into when they're editing copy. Now, I'm sure I'm forgetting one. So it's break up your paragraphs, break up your sentences, read it out loud. Oh, make sure it's written in the 4th grade reading language. And so that once you get used to these, by the way, you start doing them on your own. So, I never say you will receive, I say you'll get. Okay. I don't, and it becomes part of your pattern in writing, but don't think of these things when you're writing that first draft. So I never worry about if I'm using the word that's something that I'm going to use in the editing process. But eventually, after adding that to your editing routine, you do it so often that pretty soon you're starting to write and you stop using the word that when you don't need to a lot more often. written. But again, don't worry about that in writing the first draft. Worry about it only when you are in the editing process. So the one example I'm going to use for this one is asking ChatGPT to shorten it. Okay, so that seems like something that's very easy for ChatGPT to do. And so I actually, or Claude, or any of the other writing softwares, proprietary or or well known. So I asked ChatGPT, could go ahead, can you shorten the sentence for me? And so, I just said shorten the sentence, and it came up. The top marketing expert recently said his clients love my headline tricks. Or headline tactics. And it is shortened. It's not bad. But when I shortened it, I came up with a top marketing expert says his clients are using my tactics to write better headlines. What he got rid of was using, and what it was changing was it's not, and that's a big difference right there, because using seems like it's happening now. It's something that's going on, right? And so it's an emotional thing that makes you go, yeah, they're using it. So, it's something that's working now. These are little subtle techniques and tricks that happen with the editing process that helps build it. Now, one little change of removing of that or using a present progressive word like using isn't going to make a huge difference in your copy. But when you're doing a whole bunch of these little things, it really smooths it over. And that's why world-class copywriters pour so much time and energy into editing, and even these little minor itty-bitty details like removing a that. So that actually turns around and makes it a better sentence. Okay. So it's shorter. It's still shorter than the original. Okay. You can still see that it's shorter than the original, but I can even continue to go through this further. So in editing is, by the way, it's an ebb and flow thing. Sometimes you're editing and you're adding something. So I could add in here that his clients who make the most money love my headline tactics, and that improves the line. Okay. But it's adding to the line. It's not abbreviating it. But for the most part, I just want to show this example of how ChatGPT can't turn around and, what it removes isn't necessarily, it might be something you don't want removed because it is shortening it. It does shortening it. It doesn't need it. So I actually said, said his clients love my headline tactics. This is the crux of it, but it's really that little things like, it got rid of recently, I believe. Hold on. Yes, it got rid of recently. And so I changed it, and I changed it to using. So that means that there's nothing timely about it. Do you see the difference between those two lines? One is saying this is happening and working now. It's timely. And ChatGPT can't figure out that we humans care about something being timely, that it's working now. Okay. And it got rid of, better. It's important that it's writing better headlines. That's a huge thing to somebody. ChatGPT doesn't care about that. Claude doesn't care about that, but us humans do. So this is not to say that you shouldn't use ChatGPT, Claude, or any other AI software for a little bit of the process of editing. You can. You can ask it to turn around and use fourth grade language, and it's better than putting everything through the Hemingway app and then taking all the $5 words and dumbing them down a little bit and stuff like that. And so I am not knocking AI here. And again, I told you that if you have a really good mind for coming up with prompts and the structures of good copy, your strategy and tactics in writing copy, that you will get more out of AI, and AI will help you write more pieces to choose from and help you write faster. So I'm not knocking AI. I'm just saying that, it's much, much more powerful in the hands of a trained copywriter. And that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video. And with that, I'm going to end this.